Welcome to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. To participate in the 2024 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and nycbigbookaward.com. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be speaking with Dr. Jennifer Nash, author of Be Human, Lead Human, How to Connect People and Performance, winner of the 2024 Independent Press Award in the Relationships category. Jennifer interviewed more than 400 leaders and executives. Her research has been presented at Harvard, McLean Institute of Coaching, and Columbia University. I have to say that once I began reading, it was really difficult to put the book down. So many relatable stories. It was really fantastic. Through real world stories, research, and empirical data, Jennifer concisely outlines how to be a successful leader by connecting on the human level. Be Human, Lead Human is a take action roadmap to successful leadership and elevated performance. Jennifer pinpoints your current skills, outlines your goals for leadership, and arms you with the necessary tools that you need to be a successful leader. During the past 25 years, Jennifer has held executive roles at Deloitte Consulting, Ford Motor Company. A strategic advisor, executive coach, consultant, and professional speaker, Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Jennifer Nash Coaching and Consulting. She received her MBA from the University of Michigan and her PhD from Case Western Reserve. Jennifer joins us today from Texas. Congratulations, Jennifer, and welcome to the GAB Talks.
Thank you so much, Gabby. I'm so excited to be here today.
Me too. I'll tell you, as I mentioned in the intro, it really was a great book. I couldn't put it down. So many relatable stories, and it was just really interesting to read, and so many aha moments. But I want to get to something interesting that I read. Sort of the impetus to start the book began with a paper plate. I love the story. So share that with us.
So the paper plate is the story that I opened the book with. It's a personal story. It happened to me. And it's about the time when I was working at Ford Motor Company and we had a new CEO come in. And, back at that time, the economy was really struggling and things were really tough. And so the organization decided that they wanted to have like an appreciation day where they were going to raise employee morale. So they brought in, some, stickers and paper plates and, pens and scattered them across these tables in the hallway. And they invited everyone to come down and fill out, a plate. And they wanted us to write, a message of appreciation and then give it to someone.
Okay.
It took me a while and I kept thinking like, who am I going to give this to, And I finally decided, I think I'm going to give it to the new CEO. His name was Mulally.
Why not?
Why not? Right? Because, he's got a lot on his plate right now. He's basically trying to save the company from the brink of ruin. And so I felt like he needed a little attaboy. So, I write out this plate, I, put it in an envelope and send it off to him in interoffice mail. And I don't think that I'm ever going to see it again. Well, a couple weeks later, I get called down into my boss's office. And there's a couple people around the table. And in the middle of the table, there is this interoffice envelope. And Gabby, I knew instantly what was in this envelope, right?
It was your interoffice. It was your interoffice envelope.
Yes, it was my interoffice envelope that I had sent to Alan, right?
Uh-oh.
But it was opened. And so one of the things that really bugged me was that, those interoffice envelopes, I don't know if your listeners remember them, but they had this little twine that you could make this little figure eight around.
I remember those
pieces. And then you could seal it. And there was this big red confidential sticker on it.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that those things had been undone. And I thought, wow, okay. And so they tell me that they can't get this plate to the CEO. And I'm thinking, well, what happened? Is interoffice mail not working anymore? Did we let those people go? What's going on? And all they could tell me really was that they just didn't think it was appropriate and they couldn't give it to him. And I thought, to myself, well, I don't think it's for them to decide if that's appropriate or not, because it was a gift that I was giving this person. And who are they to decide if that should go to this person or not? Why doesn't that person get to decide if they want to accept the gift or not?
And they never said who you can and cannot send it to?
Exactly. There were no rules around that, but clearly I was butting up against, some of these unwritten cultural rules. And at the time, the company was very patriarchal and very hierarchical. And so I just decided, that didn't work for me very well. And so, I took the plate, I walked out, I walked straight out to my car, and I drove right over to World Headquarters, and I went up to the 12th floor, and Alan wasn't in. So I gave it to his assistant and said, "Hey, can you make sure that Alan gets this when he gets back?" And she's like, "Sure." And so I went back down, and went back to the office and kept working. And I just really didn't think I was going to hear about it again. And so a couple weeks later, I come into the office and my voicemail light is blinking. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I have a message." And so I hit play on the message, and it's Alan. And he's telling me like how
Wow.
this gesture of appreciation meant to him. Like he actually took the time to call me and tell me this, right? And I'm a people leader, like, far down the ladder. He's never met me. He doesn't know who I am. And I was just floored that, here's this leader trying to save this company. And yet they took, a minute out of their day to tell me that they appreciated the gesture that I had given them.
So
That
because it connected
blew
with
me away.
you on that human level, how did that make you feel? How does
Oh
that
my
affect
gosh.
how you felt about working at Ford?
Yeah. I mean, I felt for the first time in my career, and I'd been working 16 years at that point.
Mhm.
That was the first time that I felt that I was seen and that I was valued more than just an employee, right? And the work output I could give to the organization, but as a human being.
Yeah.
It just shocked me. And then of course I started to think, well, how come there aren't more leaders like that? Why don't we have more leaders like that in the world? And wouldn't this be an amazing world and amazing workplaces if we could have more leaders that led in that way?
It seems kind of obvious, doesn't it, that you have people that work for you. Why not connect on a human level? So,
Mhm.
what's missing? Why haven't leaders been doing this?
I think there's a couple reasons for it. I think first and foremost, when we look at the leader behaviors that are role modeled for us, we don't often see them.
That's true.
I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times I saw a leader role model something like that in the
Mhm.
16 years prior to that moment. So I think that's one of the reasons. I think one of the second reasons is that for so long, we have had this belief that leaders needed to be perfect and they needed to be the heroes and they needed to have all the answers. And the way that they knew how to do things was the right way. And so there wasn't a lot of questioning going on. And we sort of put them up on pedestals
Mhm.
and didn't really look at them as humans. We looked at them as these superheroes who could do all of these things and they were infallible. And so we took away sort of that human quality to them when we did that. And I think the third reason that doesn't happen is that there's oftentimes this tendency to perceive that if someone is kind or someone is compassionate or someone demonstrates some type of empathy in the workplace, that it can be viewed as a weakness. When in
Yes.
fact it's anything but.
Yes. So
And those
tell
are
us
the
about
three
human.
reasons why.
I'm sorry. So tell us about human leadership. Exactly what is it and why is it needed?
Yeah. So human leadership is an invitation for leaders today to rethink how they think about and practice leadership. It's an invitation to use a lot of these, what we typically call soft skills,
Mhm.
as their primary skills in leading people. What we
Now,
often
typically,
find,
people skills were considered soft skills.
right. And so so I have a problem with the word soft skills. I don't.
Okay. Me too.
Yeah, because they're anything but soft. They're the
Yeah.
hardest to measure and master. And yet they're relegated to this like lesser than or less important than because of the word that they give them, right? We call the hard skills and the technical skills and the functional skills, those are the ones that get measured and rewarded at performance review time. It's rare that we get rewarded or measured or evaluated on our soft skills at review time. So anyway, so human leadership is a set of principles and practices that help leaders put people first in their decision making and first in their consideration set. So
Before performance.
yes,
As your
exactly.
tagline says, prioritizing people to power performance.
You got it. So instead of prioritizing that procedure or prioritizing that process or prioritizing the profitability, We're asking leaders to think about, what does it take to help your people perform at their best, give them the tools that they need to succeed. And, when those two things happen, everything else falls into place.
So let's get back to Alan Mulally, the gentleman that you sent the lovely note to on the paper plate. He was the former president, is the former president and CEO of Ford Motor Company. In fact, Fortune magazine named him one of the world's greatest leaders.
Yes,
Had Time magazine named him one of the world's most influential people. He wrote your foreword. It was short and sweet and very to the point, and it was perfect. You experienced, while you were working at Ford alongside him, his working together management system.
Yes.
What is that culture, and why was it pivotal to Ford's success?
Yeah, so the working together management system had everything to do with how Alan turned around Ford Motor Company. So the working together system essentially said, we're no longer going to operate with the behaviors that we had prior to me coming here. We are going to have a new set of behaviors and a new culture that encourages working together, encourages collaboration, encourages people trusting each other, people supporting each other, and people helping each other to get the job done, which was very different to the culture prior to that. So working together came in. We even had, on our little badges, when we, badge in a little, on one side, it would say like one Ford, and then it had the cultural behaviors. And on the other side, it had like the working together principles and practices. And so everyone had this.
Yeah.
It was very clear from Alan, like what the expectation was and how we were going to treat each other, how we were going to interact, and how we were going to collaborate to save the company and move it forward.
And it worked. You said something before, trust. Why is trust so important? And why do leaders lack that trust with their workers?
Oh, it's a great question, and it's so complex because there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Yeah.
So trust, at its foundation, relationships are built on trust. Mm-hmm. And when you lack trust, it's hard to have a relationship with someone. And when you think about one of these defaults, I will say like principles that leaders have been taught throughout the years is that you have to make people earn your trust. You can't just give it to them. You have to make them earn it. And for some reason, that has proliferated, right, throughout organizations. So think about it, like when we're babies, we innately trust.
Yes,
we just trust. And somewhere between when we're born and when we start that new job outside of college, we have learned that to make people earn our trust instead of just giving trust first. Now, it's interesting because in high trust organizations, they outperform the market 286%. So we have these hard numbers. We have these quantitative results that show that when you lead with trust first and you give trust first, that organizational performance is much better. So yet we'll have people defaulting to not trusting each other.
It's easy, I think, as a leader to fall into that. And as you mentioned, young people coming out of college, they're put in a position. I have a young daughter who just started working, and there is that issue with trust with her boss. And it's difficult for her to do her job because she is not trusted by her superior. And it's a real challenge. How did COVID exacerbate leaders' shortcomings in dealing with the human aspects with their workers? That's a big one.
It is a big one, and I will say that like COVID was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of leaders lacking the tools that they needed to lead people, but getting away with it until COVID. Because all of a sudden now you can't manage by walking around and seeing people, right? Because you're not in an office.
Right.
You can't manage or lead with the tools that you were using before. And so now you have to figure out, how am I going to lead people if, number one, I can't see them physically? Number two, if I can't walk around and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And number three, if they're not even coming into the office, how do I trust them? Going back to what we were talking before, how do I trust them that they're actually going to work? How do I know they're not watching TV all day, right?
But it's interesting because of that, I think leaders did start relating on more of a human level.
They had to.
They
Because
had to.
they had to, because when COVID hit and people all started working at home and Zoom started, right? We remember with Zoom at the beginning, like,
All kinds of things happening in the background.
oh my gosh, yes, there was no dysfunction, right? They didn't have that yet. So
Yeah.
like you saw the whole messiness of life going on behind you. And leaders had to deal with that. All of a sudden they've got to have, they have employees that, oh, I've got to do childcare, I've got to do elder care. I don't have anybody to walk my dog. Like, there were these things going on that they had to now address. And so
performance levels were high.
they were. And that's the thing that is so interesting to me, right? Like 94% of employers rated performance higher during the pandemic than before the pandemic. Now, this is when people were working at home.
Right.
So wouldn't you think that if the performance was higher and they see that quantitatively, wouldn't you think that they would then trust that people are getting their work done and they can be trusted to do the work and perform at the level they need to perform at?
Well, it seems that they did until the pandemic was over. And you have a statistic, something like 93% of executives said that within 6 months, they want all of their workers back in the office.
Right.
And then we're back again to that lack of trust. So what is the number one thing that you outline that leaders can do right now to really be a human leader?
Ask your people what they need to do their best work.
It's a simple thing.
It's simple. It's so simple.
It's pretty simple. So you have a lot of, I love the book for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I love it is that you challenge us. It's really a tool. Each chapter challenges the reader with your turn prompts, your turn to think about what you've just covered. And there are key takeaways and bullet points at the end of each chapter. In chapter 5, Jennifer, you introduced the research-based humans framework, which includes 6 elements. Which of the 6 elements are most critical, according to you, to becoming a human leader?
That is a very tough question, Gabby, because to me, they all integrate. They all are connected. And in fact, the 6 elements are actually connected by, if you look at the framework icon, the relationships that go around it. They're the energy that power that framework. So I would actually say, if I had to pick one, I would say that it's the relationships. Because without relationships, we don't have any way to interact with one another, communicate with one another. They're relationships are the glue that get work done in organizations.
You challenge us also to take what you've coined as the Human Leader Index. It's comprised of 67 questions, also really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the Human Leader Index came out of all of the research that I did, right? So oftentimes I would hear so many things that I'd start to see patterns in what I was hearing. And so that became the foundation for creating this framework of actually actions and behaviors and thinking and beliefs that people have around leadership today. And what are they doing? And when they take the index, they can see, where do they fall on that spectrum? Are they demonstrating human leader behaviors? Are they up towards the top of the scale with their number when they get their result? Or are they somewhere in the middle? Or maybe they're, on the other end of that scale, and there's a little bit of work they need to do in terms of rethinking, how they are practicing leadership and what they actually see the role of a leader to be.
Yeah, it's almost like a personality test for a leader, if you will. And it shows you the skills that you have that you might not even know that you have or that you're lacking. And that's really what I love about it. Right. If I can get back to a little bit more on a personal level. So you've been in the corporate culture for 25 years. And I was surprised and delighted to hear that you actually have a fine arts background with concentrations in dance and foreign language. So how in the world did you make that leap?
I get asked that a lot. So, it's funny because when I was young, I wanted to be a ballerina, and, life took over and that wasn't going to work. And so when I was young, I also started piano lessons. And so I was trained classically from a very early age. And my dream was always to be a classical pianist and perform at Carnegie Hall. Like I always wanted to do that. And I took lessons for 12 years.
Wow.
And then my parents moved to a new town, and we didn't have the money to take me back and forth, drive me back and forth to piano lessons anymore. And so I wasn't able to continue with that. Um, but the other thing that I always was very good at as well was foreign languages. I just had a knack for picking them up. And so I learned, a couple languages throughout high school. And then I continued those in college, and I studied abroad to really get my fluency in place with a couple different languages. And so when I started undergrad, I thought, well, what am I going to combine this with? Because I want to be marketable, I want to be able to get a job and support myself.
Yeah.
And so the thing that came to mind was that I'd always loved different cultures and different customs and learning about people and understanding their perspectives and just really understanding the world outside of, my front door. And so I decided, well, if I studied international business, then foreign languages make sense with that, right? Because then I could be working overseas and all those kinds of things. And so I put those two things together. But when I started my first job out of college, it was really a foreign world to me, because here I am with this background in foreign languages, with this background in dance, with this background in music.
Arts, yeah.
And I could not make sense of this business world where people kept talking in sports phrases and everything was just regimented, and it didn't make any sense to me. And I spent a lot of time observing, and just learning and trying to figure out where am I going to fit into this world? And it took me a long time to figure that out, but I ultimately figured it out when I jumped into entrepreneurship.
What was your most important, relevant, earth-shattering observation that you made when you were sitting back watching everyone?
Oh my gosh. I think it was just what fascinated me were the motivational drivers behind why people were doing things the way they were doing things in the workplace. Right?
And what were those?
So some of them would be, they wanted to, I probably shouldn't say that. So some of them would be they wanted to, be in a favorable position with the boss, or they wanted to be, picked first to have that stretch assignment or that cushy project, or, the corner office. It was a lot about
what
they could gain from that, sort of
for themselves.
Yes, exactly.
You outline that in the book. You say, you suggest try not to, you give an example of a young man who started a new job. I like that example. It was very relatable. Really trying, a real try hard, and doing everything that he thought that he was right. But while he was trying to climb that ladder, he made a lot of enemies on the way up, because it was a self-serving motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, he was young, right? He didn't know what he didn't know. He didn't know how he was being perceived. Yeah. And so, I observed a lot of that, right? And so it was just always very interesting to me what people prioritized as important to them, and what mattered to them, and how that differed between people. And yet there wasn't a lot of acknowledgement of that from the management of the leadership. It was always interesting to me.
Do you have any advice for folks, young people or of any age, who work with leaders who do not adapt and who do not embrace the human leader element?
Yes. For those leaders, and, maybe even for your daughter, with her situation with her boss, if you're working with a leader or a manager who doesn't trust you, I would invite you to keep in mind that trust issue is not about you. It's about that manager or that leader and where they feel like they are falling short, but they don't want to admit it.
Right.
And so it's not you. They have that issue that they need to deal with. If that environment isn't working out for you, if it's becoming a toxic culture because of the behaviors, find another job. Don't stay. It's not worth it.
Definitely not worth it. So this book, you say in a quote, this book is designed to help you upskill your leadership for the 21st century.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So what I mean by that is, leaders typically by the time a leader gets promoted into a leader position, it's 15 years until they get some type of leadership training.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that in research. It's a long time. And so they get tapped on the head for this people leadership role, and they're expected to just figure it out. That's really hard. And what they've got in their toolbox are all of these tools that helped them be successful to where they got to, right? The tools to help them lead projects, the tools to help them manage tasks, the tools to deliver work on time, those kinds of project tasks and tools. Those don't work to manage people, as you know.
Yes.
So when I talk about upskilling, the reason I talk about the book as an opportunity to upskill is because we know not only is there a shift in how you have to manage and lead and do your work when you go into a leadership role, now you're leading people. You're not leading projects anymore. You need a different set of tools to do that. And upskilling is also involved because as AI comes onto the scene, your job as a leader is to understand what changes is that wreaking on your workforce, right? How are their jobs going to be different? What tasks are going to be different for them? How are they going to need to adapt to that? And how can you help them learn how to grow those skills that they're going to need to be successful going forward? So it's upskilling in a couple different ways. It's also upskilling because it invites you to think differently about the role of a leader and what that means going forward. We know now that like command and control is dead. It does not work anymore. People want autonomy, they want voice, they want choice. So how can you integrate that into your leadership toolkit and be a coach and a facilitator and gain those skills, upskill yourself so that you are able to lead people going forward?
And you even suggest in the book, Jennifer, don't wait until you're in that leadership position. Start upskilling yourself now from an entry level position, and then when you get to that leadership position, you're set.
Absolutely.
You will know how to connect with humans and how to connect with your people.
Absolutely.
I love that part of the book as well. So who should be reading this book? Is it for professionals only?
Yeah, this is a great question. I get this a lot. So, it is designed for leaders, right, or managers or people that are in the workplace, but it's not just for people who have the title or role of a leader or manager who have a big P&L underneath them. It's also for, let's say, for parents who want to help their kids develop social skills, develop communication skills, develop their ability to interact with others. That, we're losing that, right? We're losing that ability to connect human to human because of our technology, which is so great, but at the same time, it disconnects us through screens and we're losing that ability to connect with our humans. I hear so often that some of our college grads going into their first jobs, they're taking their parents to the interviews to help them facilitate that conversation.
Wow.
So we are in a pandemic of social skills, honestly.
Although I love the idea of remote working and the ability to do that, I find that also limits your social skills. Also, young people go just sitting in their living room or in an office all day without connecting with other humans in the office face to face. There's no more water cooler talk.
Right, exactly. And as you know, that's where a lot of things happen at the water cooler.
It's true. A lot of things happen there. So Jennifer, this was your debut book and it's fantastic. So any plans for any other books? Because I know you do a lot of consulting and public speaking.
I've been asked that quite a bit. There are a few other things in the works. But right now I am focused on getting an online course out there that's going to be about the humans framework and the master class to help people learn about that tool.
That's fantastic. So, Jennifer, share your life mantra with us.
My life mantra?
Yes. I know you have one.
So the very first one that came to mind, Gabby, when you asked me, was a quote from this Robert Frost poem. So two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled, and it has made all the difference.
That was the first line in your book. I love that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So Jennifer, how can we find out more about your work? Hopefully find out about the course that you're planning to do and purchase the book.
Sure. So if people would like to learn more about me, they can go to my website, which is drdrjennifernash.com. There they will also find a link to the Human Leader Index. It's complimentary. They can take that. There's also a link there to the book.
Wonderful.
And they should be able to find the book wherever they can purchase their books, Amazon, Chapters, Barnes & Noble, anywhere they prefer to buy their books. It's also at a couple independent bookstores. Book People here in Austin, Texas is carrying it. They've got signed copies actually right now. And Schuler Books in Ann Arbor, Michigan also has some signed copies on the shelf. Oh, and if you're flying, the Detroit Metro Airport at the Ink by Hudson stand near gate A46, I believe it is, also has some signed copies in stock.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Jennifer, this was really, really interesting. I appreciate all of your advice, all of the tools, and the book is a must read, listeners. Please go out there and get it. Be Human. Love to read another book of yours and possibly see the course that you have. It seems to be, really helpful. It'll be a master class on connecting on a human level as a leader.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jennifer. It was a pleasure meeting with you. Join us for our next podcast. This is your hostess, Gabby Oldak. Until next time, keep on reading.